And here we are again, Hornets, ready for another Ready Workbook lesson. So the very first thing we're going to look at and we're going to get started with Ready Reading Lesson 9, Analyzing Word Meanings. And we want to make sure that you realize what we're doing right now, that we're going to determine, notice for us, we're looking at our reading for information standards. So we're going to be looking at informational text instead of fiction, poetry, or drama or folklore this time. So get ready for a little something different. But this time we are going to be determining the meaning of words and phrases as they are used in a text, including their figurative, connotative, and technical meanings. And we're going to analyze the impact of that word choice on meaning and this word over here that you can't see that I'm going to add, and that is tone. Remember, that's that whole positive, negative, and neutral thing we've been working on all year. Okay, so with that being said, I'm going to go to our next slide. And I'm going to... So our very first thing, we're going to create a new Sourcebook entry. So in case you don't have that out, this would be a great time to get out your Sourcebook. And we have a new Sourcebook entry on tone, and we're going to write down some notes before we get into the actual workbook. So, and anytime you need to pause me, if I get to going too fast, you can pause me to catch up. So our very first thing we're going to talk about is that tone is what the author uses to express how he or she feels about a topic. And the tone of a word can be technical, connotative, or figurative. And I'm going to let you know a secret. It can be a combination of all of it sometimes. So when we talk about a technical tone, it's our next set of notes, guys. Goes along with all of this. It's all on one page. A technical tone is what the author uses to show the audience specific names, places, subjects, and or material by using words and descriptions without any feelings associated with those terms. And we use that in subject areas, especially for informational text, such as science, math, and social studies. And a lot of times, these technical tones are neutral. They don't have a whole lot of meaning or feeling behind them. And that is so that way you can get all of your information out quickly. And also so that way, and we use a lot of those science, math, and social studies vocabulary for that. All right, our next one is going to be our connotative tone. And connotation, we already talked about earlier in the year, but connotative tone is what the words make you feel. And just like you've got denotation, which is the basic meaning or the dictionary definition, you have connotation, which is what the word's associated with. And you get that positive, negative, or neutral tone to a word. Positive making meaning that it's great, good. It's those glad feelings, those positive things that make us put in a happy place. And then we have our negative, which is mad, bad, sad. It's those add feelings besides glad. Melancholy, depressed, irritated, annoyed. Then we end up with neutral, which is what I like to call those meh words that actually, or have no feeling behind it whatsoever. And then we also deal with that word choice, is that word chosen for its connotation expresses not just an idea, but also a feeling. And we've talked about before about strong and weak. Like when we talk about mad, that's a weak word in comparison to angry, which is also a weak. Then we have a stronger version of that, which would be irritated. So when we deal with those strong and negative, or those strong and weak words. So this is also a time that you can stop and take a minute and think about some more positive feelings and some more negative feelings. So if you need to pause me to catch up on your notes, because this is all a continuation on tone, pause me, but I'm going to keep going. And then we end up with our figurative tone. And figurative tone is the tone of a word it's using a metaphor, which is a comparison using two things, not using like or as, two unlike things, not using like or as. Simile, things, the comparison between two unlike things by using like or as. Personification, you're personifying, giving human-like traits to things that aren't human. Hyperbole is extreme exaggeration. An idiom is something that uses only in our culture. It's saying something like out of the frying pan and into the fire. We're not literally in a frying pan. There literally is no fire. It just means going from one bad thing to something even worse. And then we also have allusions, which we talked about earlier, are biblical, mythological, historical, cultural, and literary. All of those things, these figurative things, give us deeper meanings to what we're reading about. And the author usually does it on purpose to show these ideas in a much more positive or a much more negative way. And they actually get to exercise their creativity, which you don't get to do so much in technical text. Okay. So with that being said, I'm going to move on to our workbook. Once you finish taking these notes, you can put your source book away for right now. You're going to have to take a picture of it later and put it in your slideshow to show me you actually did that. But for right now, we're going to go ahead and go on to our workbook. And that is on page 87. So if you do not have your materials out, this is a good place to pause and get out your workbook and get out a highlighter. It always helps. Miss Murray recommends highlighters. I like yellow just because it shows up really well in these blue books that we're using. And to get out anything else you think you might need, pen, pencil. I'm hoping you already have it out because you just took Sourcebook notes, but some of you might have already written this down and you're getting back to this now after you having to pause it. So if you do not have that stuff out, pause me. If you didn't finish copying down your notes, pause me. And I'm going to now continue going on with our lesson. So we are on page 87. Remember, anything that I do to the workbook page, you also need to do to the workbook page. And the very first thing that anytime that we have a new text, we want to make sure we box our title because that gives us a chance to actually look at it and ask us what it's saying. So analyzing word meanings, I'm going to rewrite it at the top of my screen. So that way we can rewrite it at the top of our workbook page as well. And analyzing means that we're going to break it down. We want to break apart. We want to make sure that we know what we're talking about when we're looking at these words. And I'm also going to make sure that you realize that we're talking about tone. When we're looking at word meanings, that we always start with the simple, positive, negative, and neutral. And then we take our next step from there to figure out what kind of word it is. Let's go ahead and we're going to circle that our theme for this, everything we're reading about in this lesson of the workbook in lesson 9 is going to deal with little creatures with a big impact. Okay? I'm not talking about students. Y'all all know you have a big impact. So let's just go on with what our workbook is saying. So the very first thing that we're looking at is that technical meaning. So you want to underline, highlight, circle, whatever it is you need to do to make sure you realize what technical meaning is right there. And we've already written this down in our source book. We're going to underline it again. And it's subject areas in science, math, engineering. I added social studies in your notes that express an idea using technical words and phrases. And a lot of times these words, especially if you're Miss Murray, sometimes I struggle with pronunciation and I have to go look up how to say it. And you will understand when we get to the word ave posterior, Miss Murray, or ave posterior. I always want to say ave posterior. That's not correct. So then our next one, we want to look at the connotative meaning that could be behind the word. And that means that we're looking to see if it expresses not just an idea, but also that says feeling. We also look sometimes to see if it's a strong or weak word. Because sometimes certain characters get different types of words or when we're looking at informational text, different things get stronger or weak words depending on the topic that the author's writing about. Then in our next one, we're looking at figurative meanings. And figurative meanings deal with how the author combines words and phrases that express ideas in creative, unusual, unexpected ways. Now, as we said earlier, this means we are talking about our big ideas when it comes to our big literary devices and figurative language, and that is they're going to use a metaphor And then there also, or a simile. Remember, if I'm writing it, you're writing it. Personification. Or anybody got a guess? What do you think it is? That's right, hyperbole. It is hyperbole, not a hyperbole. And then we've got the idiom. And then we have got the last one that I like to also include, and that's my allusion. Okay. Remember, I always like to think of metaphor as, the top, the very beginning, and then you've got that girl that he likes, the simile that makes you smile. This is because it's what it's spelled like, because he likes her or she likes whoever they like. Then they're going to end up having kids. That's their personification. And they're going to start doing things like people do because they're kids, like adults. And then they get too hyper, though, and it drives us crazy. And we exaggerate because they really didn't drive us crazy. We're going to hyperbolize their behavior. And then we've also got that crazy cousin that we sometimes think is an idiot, and we have to come up with creative ways to talk about them so we don't hurt their feelings. And all this sometimes it is an allusion to something else that happened in the family earlier. And that's how, Miss Murray keeps her hierarchy of figurative language and literary devices. Right. All right. So now, if you look down underneath all of this, we have got our diagram. Okay. And it's a diagram of a wasp. So what we're going to do is I want you to think about the fact that we're going to look, as we're talking about this and we're about to read the instructions, but the very first thing I want you to realize is we're going to be looking for the tone of the diagram. All right. And that's going to come into play because even though this is technical, it is still going to have its very own tone. So my instructions are telling me to underline the words in the diagram below with technical, figurative, or connotative meanings. So we're going to start with our first box, and it says the huge black eyes seemed borrowed from the face of an alien. Well, I know that when I'm looking for technical, there's not a whole lot of technical stuff, and I'm looking at, but it does tell me these huge black eyes, which kind of makes you think that they're not real normal eyes because we have different colors and different layers in human eyes. And they seem borrowed from the face of an alien. Well, guys, I don't know about y'all, but anytime we're talking about these huge black eyes that aren't like ours, that kind of leads us toward being a little bit afraid. And then we're also talking about they seem like they were from a space alien. And a lot of times in science fiction movies, aliens aren't always depicted with such a positive light. They're very negative, and they usually make us a little bit scared that they're going to come and take over the world. So in this case, we are using a figurative meaning, figurative type of words for this one to describe the wasp. Now, when it comes to that, is this positive, negative, and neutral? I hope you realize that it was negative. All right. And when we talk about the fact that it's figurative, it's using that metaphor to compare the eyes of the wasp to that of a space alien, which equals it's supposed to make you a little bit scary, a little bit afraid, because aliens are normally in the sci-fi world something we're afraid of. And when that kind of description makes us a little bit creeped out by the wasp. So when we compare the wasp's eyes to the bug to an alien, it's supposed to make you a little bit afraid. Well, let's go to our next. That was number 1. Let's just number these 1, 2, 3. Let's go to number 2, where we've got the wicked speed of the wings allows the wasp to snatch up its meal and dart away like a thief. Well, this one, by the way, guys, is telling you the wasp is fast. Okay? That first one was telling us the wasp was scary. This one tells us the wasp is fast. But what words is it using to give me that meaning? Well, it says the wicked speed. It's really hard for speed to be wicked, but the wicked speed of the wings allows the wasp to snatch, not take, not grab, but to snatch up its meal and dart. That shows you just how fast it is. Not run, not fly, not move, but dart away like a thief. That's also dealing with some figurative right there because it's comparing, it's using connotative words. Connotative to describe the wasp as being fast like a thief. So it is figurative using that simile, but how's it getting there? Well, it's using words with very strong feelings. What kind of feelings, Miss Murray? Wicked. Is that a positive, negative, or neutral word? Typically, the Wicked Witch of the West, who I'm compared to a lot, thank you very much. It doesn't bother me. I love it. The wicked is normally something that is negative. Okay. To snatch that's usually something that is also considered negative. And to dart is also usually negative in comparison to run or to be quick. Darting is like when you're throwing darts at a board, those are sharp and those are sticking into something. It's not normally something positive. And a thief is also something negative. So even though here the wasp is fast, the overall connotation that the author's using right here seems to be kind of negative. And it's making the wasp seem like he's a bad guy. That he's not somebody you want to invite over and have around because he's going to steal your stuff. Then we have our last one, and number 3 says the female wasp's oviposterior or egg-laying organ is found in the abdomen. It also functions as a stinger to paralyze and kill prey. Well, here we've got some words that they don't have as much feeling behind them. There isn't a whole lot of like, or it's like this, or we're going to compare it to that. It's straight up giving us a fact. Okay, I'm going to write that word. It is giving us a fact about the wasp. And it's that its oviposterior or egg-laying organ is found in the abdomen. It also functions as a stinger to paralyze and kill prey. Well, all of this is very, very technical. Okay, it is giving us scientific words and factual information and trying not to put any feeling in it. Now, that's the thing, though, kiddos, to our hornets that are watching this video, and it's still, once we get down here and we're talking about a stinger, which hurts if it stings you, and if it's going to paralyze you, that's also something negative, and killing and prey. We still have negative words because even though it's technical, which should be neutral, overall, it's still negative because it's about killing. Because it doesn't say it's food. It says killing its prey. So it's using specific words that are, even though it's technical, that still come off with a negative connotation. So we're going to go back to our top question that we asked at the top. Tone of the diagram. Overall, this author has a very negative tone about the wasp, or for us, for hornets, I guess, since that's what we are. But I want you to, while I go over the next half, I want you to start thinking overall of some words that you would use to describe the author's tone. Start thinking of, because we have to remember, we got to go from negative to an actual feeling. I need an actual feeling word that we're going to need to go right there. So I want you to start thinking about that while we go ahead and move on and discuss the next part. All right. So here we have our chart that shows the phrases from the diagram and each type of meaning, and it wants us to complete the chart. So it's going to give me my textual evidence. Notice that we've even got the quotation marks to show me that it's pulling me directly from the text, and it says snatch up its meal. Well, That is connotative. That's where this was the number 2. I should have numbered them right. That's 2, 3, and 1. So, and we already said that that was connotative, and it's to suggest that the wasp takes the meal suddenly, perhaps even rudely. That's not somebody you want to invite over because you think it's going to steal your stuff. All right, then we've got our third one, which is our ave posterior egg-laying organ is found in the abdomen. Well, we already said that that was technical. That's right. And the author uses it to communicate precisely what part of the wasp is being described. That's why I said it's very factual. Okay. And then we have our last one. I seem borrowed from the face of a space alien. And that one is, you're right, figurative. And the author is using the figurative because, guys, this metaphor is to make us realize how strange the wasps look to that of an alien, and that it's a little bit, you said it, scary. So, paying attention to the different types of meanings will help you understand how the author thinks and feels about a topic. For example, because this is where we're going to get that feeling, that overall feeling that the author has about this. We said it was negative, but now we want to tell me negative how I need a feeling behind it. So you might guess that the author of the diagram has some scientific knowledge about wasps, but he also finds them rather unnerving. Miss Murray would have said scared, creepy, also terrified. Do you have anything extra you would say that would go along with that negative feeling that the author gives us? So I want you to stop and think about that. All right. So in our next part of the video, part 2, this is a part 1 to part 2 of the video, we're going to look at an excerpt from Stephen King's The Shining, because that is a book. So we're going to look at that. We just did an informational text looking at that diagram. And now we're going to look at how to use this type of information in a novel. So go ahead and finish up what you're doing, and this would be a good time to catch up before we move on to part 2.